Hello grade 9. Today's video about something that happened in Europe and it changed everything in Europe. It's called nationalism. Actually, nationalism came after the Reformation that happened against the Catholic Church and the domination that had big effect of all Europe. We need to know that after this Renaissance and this Reformation, all Europe was still monarchies. Each king or queen holds all the power in her hand. And we need to know that there was a system called feudalism. Feudalism is that all landowners own most of the land and all the people are poor and peasants or farmers. Therefore, the people started to rebel against this system. That the people would like to have their own rights, the people would like to live normally and break this system of feudalism. So, people start to think that if we believe in ourselves, believe in our countries, believe in our nation, we can move on to the future and we can have our own rights. So what is feudalism, guys? This was political system in which powerful lords owned most of the land, and they gave some land to nobles in exchange for military service by those nobles. And kings gained power over feudal lords and nationalism evolved. So nationalism started to evolve against feudalism. And what is exactly nationalism? It is the belief that people should be loyal to their nation, believe in their nation. If you are French, then you have to believe in France, have to believe in your nation, the French people. And so on with most of countries in Europe that time. And people should share land, culture, and history. Nationalism often caused groups to want their own countries, so it contributed to rise of modern nation states. So now we know that nationalism was a movement that come against feudalism. And the first nation who believed so much in nationalism and they had real effect against this feudalism, it was France. So by the late 1600s, French king really was too strong and the landowners held everything in their hands and the people were suffering of poverty. So in 1789 the people began to rebel against the system. And what we heard about before, the French Revolution started. The king and they took over the country, they killed the king and the queen, and in a few years a man came and his name is Napoleon, and he seized the power. He made from himself a big dictator and he named himself as the dictator or the emperor. He made himself emperor and he tried to conquer all of Europe, but he was defeated by England. Guys, the idea of nationalism, when you believe about who you are and believe about your country and the nation, they started also to have this expansion in land. We need to conquer and show how strong and powerful we are. So we know now the French people were the first who believed in nationalism and they had the first result, which was the French Revolution. Now we're going to Germany, and this kind of nationalism made the countries in Europe go against each other, and they became strong rivals. And from the 1600s to 1945 was repeatedly broke out between France and Austria or Germany. France and Austria or Germany, they speak German and they mostly one nation. And France, on the other hand, wants to show how strong, so they used to fight against each other all the time. But 1871, this man came, Otto von Bismarck, and he unified the whole German lands and made one country and started to gain the power again and started to go in direct wars against France. So it was of one of many European countries affected by a new wave of nationalism in the 1800s. So I have a question for you. What was the real result of nationalism at that time? Of course, it was wars in Europe. The nationalistic and competition for colonies among European nations helped cause World War I. So the war was the result of this nationalism. And let's go to see which countries were against each other in World War I. Here, the Central Powers, and it was three countries: Austria, Hungarian Empire, German Empire plus Ottoman Empire. Against these three countries, Russia, France, and United Kingdom. Who won? The Allied nations won. And after they won, they put very strong rules, persecution rules against the German people. And the German people felt so bad financially and socially at that time after World War I, after they defeated, and start another movement of parties to come again and believe in more nationalism, like the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party later was led by a man, his name was Adolf Hitler, and the Nazis tried to conquer also the whole of Europe. And then that led to the World War II, which was two sides, the Allies and the Axis. The Axis was Japan, Italy, and Germany. The Allies, France, USA, Britain, and Soviet Union, which is now Russia. Who won? Of course, the Allies again won. And at that time, something really happened, and it's unforgettable, which is the Holocaust, or a program of mass murder of European Jews and other minorities in 1945. The Allies defeated Germany, or the Allies defeated the Axis. After this war, Germany was split in two nations, or in two countries: the West Germany and the East Germany. The West Germany was controlled by the USA, UK, and France politically, and the same idea. The East Germany was led and controlled by the Soviet Union, as we see here. And between these two parts, there was a very big wall called Berlin Wall, and if you were living here in the east, you can't go to the west, and the same idea, if you're living in the west, you can't go to the east at that time. And in 1989, anti-communist reforms swept Europe, and in response to protest, East Germany opened the Berlin Wall. And later, the Soviet Union fell down, and it became Russia. So that's enough for today, and thank you very much for your listening.